For those of you who don't know, Masklophobia is the fear of people in masks and costumes, such as mascots, full-bodied costumed characters, masquerade costumes, and Halloween costumes, or in this case, Disney characters. Today we'll be focusing on characters that appeared at the parks when they first opened. You guys voted and decided which characters were the least and the most creepy. And we're also excited to announce that we'll be joined by a huge Disney characters expert, Disney Dan.
Hey, what's going on, Fastpass Facts? It's Dan here. Thanks for inviting me to take a close-up look at Masklophobia. Ooh, I've got the creeps. I got the wiggles. I got the shivers. Ugh. Donald. The first time Donald was seen was way back in 1937 when he, alongside Mickey, Minnie, and the Seven Dwarfs, appeared at the Snow White premiere. This version of the character had a long beak and thick legs. His eyes were on the side, and he looked rather baggy, kind of like the Donald plush dolls at the time. This Donald costume was not entirely creepy yet. After this appearance, Donald Duck came back in 1950, this time for Walt Disney's Toy Shop segment of the Ice Capades. This is the creepiest version of the Donald costume. You would think that the creepiest thing about the costume are Donald's lifeless eyes, but that's not the case. In this costume, the silhouette and even face of the person inside could be seen through a white screen under Donald's beak. The worst thing about this is when Disneyland opened in 1955, Disney did not have character costumes, but of course the main characters had to be at Disneyland's opening, so they had to improvise and contact the Ice Capades so they could use their costumes made for the show at Disneyland. Imagine running into Donald to get an autograph and seeing that. This is definitely nightmare fuel for anyone with Masklophobia. Fortunately, Donald had a major overhaul in 1960 when Bill Justice designed his new and improved costume. And from that moment on, Donald's costume has improved with each version that Disney has come up with. If you want to check out Donald's full evolution, check out this video.
Number 11. White Rabbit. One of the worst character designs that has ever come to Disney parks was the White Rabbit. The first time this character appeared was at the special opening parade of Disneyland and in the inauguration broadcast. This was a super creepy costume. So creepy, in fact, that it didn't appear again until 1958, when he came back during the inauguration of the Alice in Wonderland dark ride. And we can only guess that the inclusion of this character was an afterthought. The ride was inaugurated by none other than Walt, and he was accompanied by Alice, Minnie, and Mickey. The ceremony was going great until suddenly, a terrifying creature emerged from the ride's main tunnel. This creature was the White Rabbit. Only this design looked like it was taken from the depths of kids' nightmares. The costume was completely white, and the proportions were all wrong. The rabbit was as tall as an adult, and its mask was utterly terrifying. The worst thing about it is that you could see the cast member's head in the back of the costume. The ceremony ended when Walt, Alice, and this terrifying creature boarded the ride and disappeared into the tunnel. This was undoubtedly the worst version of any Disney character at the parks, but it was thankfully seen just a few times. And in 1967, the character's design completely changed, resembling the White Rabbit from the movie a little more, but having a big black nose and a flesh-toned face. It wasn't until 1996 when the rabbit changed again, resembling his animated counterpart completely.
Number 10. Dumbo. Dumbo is one of Disney's cutest characters, so it might be strange to see him on the list, and it's even weirder to know that even though Dumbo is considered a rare character nowadays, he was one of the first characters to appear at Disney parks. But the Dumbo costume character predates the opening of Disneyland also. He first appeared in the 1949 Ice Capades Disney show. Like many other characters, this first version of Dumbo is definitely unintentionally scary. This version of Dumbo has a huge head, and because he was a quadruped, 2 skaters were needed to handle the costume, which made the character look even weirder. The skater in the front was in charge of moving the trunk and of course the front legs, while the one in the back only moved the back legs. Then in 1955, when Disneyland opened and requested character costumes, the Dumbo costume had to have some modifications so it could be used for the opening. Numerous vision holes were added to the costume so performers could see through. This made the costume even more terrifying. Thankfully, after a while, the suit changed, and this change came in 1959. Dumbo became much less creepy. The giant head was removed, giving it a look more similar to the movie Dumbo. Also, his trunk now appeared to be looking up, which helped to make it look cute. More importantly, he now walked on 2 legs. Dumbo's gone through many changes since then, which have really improved his appearance. He has rarely been seen meeting guests, but we can see him appear in parades and, of course, the fantastic flying Dumbo in the magical fireworks at Disneyland.
Number 9. The Seven Dwarfs. The Seven Dwarfs first appeared along with Mickey and Minnie at the Snow White premiere at Carthay Circle in 1937. These costumes were pretty basic. Their outfits were pretty similar to the ones from the movie, and they wore ceramic masks with long beards. But while these costumes were not as terrifying as Mickey and Minnie, they were not perfect, especially taking into consideration the dwarfs' proportions. Then, the dwarfs appear in the Disney Ice-Capades. But this time, the costumes changed, and they all had something in common. They were all terrifying. Each of them was creepy in their own way, but the scariest of them all, in our opinion, is Dopey. There are many pictures of these costumes, and each one is worse than the other. The costumes were also reused for Disneyland's opening and for various parades. Then in 1960, Disney decided to finally create their version of the Seven Dwarfs. They designed the dwarves with big heads, big hats, and small bodies. The dwarves' faces and beards were made out of thin rubber, giving them a bulky, wrinkly look. The hats had screens in the middle that helped the cast members see. The creepy part of these costumes is that the cast member did not have any control over the character's arms, so they just hung there lifelessly. Since the performers had no control of the arms, they used the dwarves' facial features to give them more life. They would wiggle their tongue or nose. Dopey and Bashful had special features. Dopey could move his ears, and Bashful could blink. Doc was able to move his glasses up and down. The dwarves received another improvement in 1968. They were redesigned to have new heads with similar expressions as before. New hats, a new wardrobe, and new hands. The cast members now had control of the arms, but the beard was still made of plastic. This design made way for the 1980 design, which is very similar to the one we currently see at the parks, with fur beards and a color scheme closer to the original one. Disney has made many versions of the dwarves, but thankfully they left their creepy designs in the past.
Number 8. Pinocchio. Pinocchio is one of the creepiest characters on the list. This character has a pretty weird debut, honestly, because according to legends, it debuted at the Pinocchio film premiere in 1940. Disney had decided to hire 11 little people to dance around and wave, wearing simple Pinocchio masks, matching shirts, and vests to entertain children during the premiere. This sounded great, but apparently the actors got drunk and started swearing at each other and laughing. And then, for whatever reason, one of them decided to take off their clothes, and the other followed. Disney ultimately called the police, who climbed up on the roof to find the actors hanging out and playing craps. So Pinocchio's story has already started with a weird one. The next time Pinocchio appeared was in the Ice-Capades. This version of the costume looked like an adult Pinocchio, who wore the classic suit from the movie minus the hat and blue bow. The sleeves and pants were painted to look like wooden joints. A year later, the Ice-Capades modified the costume, making it much more terrifying. They gave Pinocchio his signature hat and blue bow, but they altered his head and added a separate jaw piece to give it a marionette look, which made it so creepy. The Ice-Capades Pinocchio was also the one used for Disneyland's opening and remained that design until 1962 when Disney redesigned the character. This time Pinocchio looked less creepy and had a huge head and had Jiminy Cricket sitting on his hat. Since then, Disney has made several changes to the costume to get it to the one we see today at the parks, but that doesn't mean all those versions have been less creepy. Let's take, for example, the 1987 Disney on Ice version, the most terrifying one to date, and the Pinocchio from the Nightmare Experiment at Hong Kong Disneyland. Ugh.
Number 7. Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is probably everyone's favorite silly bear, and it was a huge must to have him at Disneyland greeting his fans. Unfortunately, as with many other characters, Winnie's first designs were a bit creepy, and in 1965, the first Winnie version came to the park. This first version was unrecognizable, with Winnie having a huge head, eyebrows, and brown eyes that looked red at times, making the character look terrifying. Also, the character's arms could not move, so the cast member inside the suit could only move Winnie's mouth. On top of the huge head, Winnie carried a big jar of honey that allowed the cast member to see where they were going. A year later, in 1966, Winnie's costume had a small change. The eyebrows changed from brown to black, but the rest remained the same. The costume didn't change again until 1989 when a long-awaited update was finally done to Pooh. He lost the huge head, got white eyes with black pupils, and had a smaller smile instead of a weird moving one. Also, the costume's proportions were much better, allowing the performer to have full control, especially the arms. This new design was very cute. After this, Pooh's design has received some slight changes, but we can all agree that red-eyed Pooh is the thing of nightmares.
Number 6. Tick-Tock Croc. TikTok is somehow one of Disney Parks' most used characters. It appears at various shows and parades like Fantasmic, One Man's Dream, and Fantasy on Parade. But without a doubt, the weirdest, strangest appearance of this character came back in the late 1960s. During this time, Disney created a TikTok croc costume to promote the park. They used the character in many promotional pictures and even stationery for the company. And of course, he appeared as a walk-around character, mainly in Fantasyland, along with Peter Pan. While nowadays TikTok might look kind of cute, to some people, the costume character in the 60s was very creepy. This is mainly because of the terrifying size of the jaw and the strange shape it made while it walked on two legs. The TikTok croc costume was unfortunately lost because no one knows where it is now. There are some rumors going around that says that a collector has the costume head mounted on top of their fireplace as kind of a trophy, but who knows? There is also a new version of the character created in 2009 and has been seen in special parades, a very rare meet and greets, but honestly, the new version is pretty creepy also.
Number 5. The Three Little Pigs. The Three Little Pigs was a huge success when it came out in 1933. The cartoon ran for months in theaters and won the 1934 Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, and it's still considered the most successful animated short to date. Because of this, they were some of the characters that also appeared at the Walt Disney's Toy Shop segment of the Ice Capades of 1950. These costumes were designed to be comfortable for the skater, but uncomfortable to the eye. The heads were designed after a real pig's head instead of a cartoon pig, which made them pretty creepy. Their lower jaws are articulated like a ventriloquist dummy. The suits were a simple build, but they were pretty tall. Their eyes focused varied between pig, one looking forwards, the other looking to the left, and the other to the right. And one of the pigs, Practical Pig, wore shorts. The shorts that he wore gave him the appearance that he was wearing diapers. These costumes were also borrowed for Disneyland's opening, and after opening day, Disneyland kept these costumes so they could roam the park and greet guests. This design of the pigs stayed until 1959 when Disney redesigned the costumes, with updated bodies and new heads. This made them much less creepy. The costumes didn't change again until 1961, when the characters' heads changed and were bigger. The pigs' expressions and clothing changed too. There have been some other changes to the pigs' costumes, but thankfully they haven't returned to being creepy. The sad thing is that they have become very rare, and you can mostly just see them at special events, or at Tokyo Disneyland sometimes.
Number 4. Lady Tremaine and Stepsisters. The fact that Lady Tremaine, Anastasia, and Drizella appear on this list might be a surprise, especially taking into consideration how high they are on the list, but in a moment you'll see why. Nowadays, Lady Tremaine and the Stepsisters are not a very rare character at Disney parks. They can be found regularly in the Courtyard Castle area of Walt Disney World and during Halloween time at Disneyland. But what many people don't know is that these three characters have been at Disney parks for a long time, and they haven't always been the face characters that we all know. The first version of the characters seem to come straight from our nightmares. While the characters' dresses have a few modifications, the rest of the costumes are very creepy. These masks are pretty terrifying. In this picture, we can see that only the face characters from Cinderella are Cinderella and the Prince. Other creepy things about this picture is the fairy godmother, who also wore a very scary mask. Thankfully, these characters have been changed around through the years, and they became face characters. One of the main reasons for this was probably the interactions with guests. But surprisingly, while Fairy Godmother's appearance changed in almost every park, in Japan, she can still be seen wearing a mask, and she is without a doubt one of the creepiest Disney characters in the parks. These masks are super scary, and it's no wonder why they're number 4 on the list.
Number 3. Mickey Mouse. As incredible as it may sound, Mickey is not the first place on our list. But that doesn't mean that Mickey's costume was not terrifying during his early years as a walk-around character. The first time a Mickey costume was seen was in 1934, when he appeared on an Oakland Tribune issue, celebrating Christmas time with Santa Claus. They look unsettling, but this is nothing compared to what came next. In 1937, Mickey and Minnie appeared in the premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs at the Carthay Circle Theater. This version was so terrifying that Disney legend Bill Justice was shocked, saying that the character appearance must have been an afterthought because they weren't anything close to the character model sheets. These costumes were based on the Charlotte Clark dolls, and while the dolls are very cute, they did not translate well to costumes. The masks' flattened shape gave them a very terrifying appearance, and the proportions were totally bizarre. Then, as we said before, many Disney characters appeared in the Ice-Capades and later were used for the opening of Disneyland. But the problem with these costumes is that they were designed to help skaters have great visibility and movement, so the proportions seemed very weird and creepy. In addition to this, they had large holes in the head, and they were made to be seen from afar, so seeing them up close was disturbing. Still, these were the costumes that were used for 3 years at Disneyland until they decided it was time for a change. The new costumes were still slightly based on the Ice-Capades ones, but they had better looking heads. However, the proportions were still incorrect, and the costumes were too heavy, which made them look awkward. For Disneyland's 4th anniversary, there was a big improvement in the costumes. The heads finally changed to a design more similar to the animated Mickey, but still, the proportions of the rest of the body were weird. It wasn't until 1961, when, thanks to Disney legend John Hench, the costumes changed again, and finally had better proportions. They could move their ears and nose, and the shoes looked better too. The problem with these costumes were the arms, because they had false arms and cast members could not control them. Then, in 1962, Mickey and Minnie left their creepy days behind for this new design made by Bill Justice. They now had the correct height and looked far better for character interactions. Their heads were enormously improved, and they wore better gloves. These designs paved the way for the cute Mickey and Minnie that we're lucky to have today.
Number 2, Pluto. Pluto is number 2 on the list, and with excellent reason. Just as many other characters on the list, Pluto debuted on the Ice-Capade show in 1950. This version of Pluto, also known as Camel Pluto, works similarly to the Dumbo costume, where one skater was in charge of the front legs and another skater was in charge of the back. And this suit is pure nightmare fuel. It was composed of 4 different parts: the head, the front legs, the back legs, and an in-between piece to keep the front and back together, and the whole thing kind of comes together pretty creepy. The proportions were far from natural, and seeing Pluto moving is kind of terrifying. Not only that, but Pluto's head was also kind of creepy. This character was also used for the opening of Disneyland, and if you think that this Pluto costume skating is scary, take a look at how it walked. It seriously did not work at all. It is horrifying. Fortunately, in 1969, Pluto received a huge overhaul, leaving the 2-person fursuit behind and becoming a biped, leaving the original design only in people's nightmares. The character changed again in 1977, but this was a downgrade, honestly, because Disney added those horrifying eyebrows to Pluto, which made him go back to the creepy roots he had. Thankfully, Disney realized this was a mistake, and Pluto was drastically redesigned yet again in 1978. The costume looked more like the cartoon counterpart we see today. He received a resculpted head, a new body. He had happier, friendly appearance, with his mouth open, his tongue sticking out. There have been some other design changes to the character, but thankfully, he changed from his original terrifying appearance and became one of the guests' favorite characters to be found in the parks. Thanks for inviting me to take a look at all these creepy masks, guys. Ooh. Some of these are just too much. There's too much. I can't handle it. I can't.
Number 1, Minnie Mouse. And we finally reached number 1 on our list. We have gone through some pretty disturbing characters, but without a doubt, the one that caught everyone's eye was Minnie. And how could she not if you just take a look at this picture? And even though this costume is not directly from Disney parks, it is an official Disney costume. You see, in 1933, the McCall Pattern Company issued the patterns for the child's fancy dress costume for Halloween. These costumes were made for children and adults alike, and were based on the original Charlotte Clark Minnie dolls. But they honestly look like they were based on our nightmares. These costumes were utterly terrifying. They had different elements like the skirt, the leotard, the gloves, and the scary mask. They also had a Minnie Mouse patch. These pictures of children and adults wearing the costumes are horrifying. And if they appear scary to everyone, we can't imagine how creepy people with masklophobia find them. The company also released costumes of other characters like Mickey, Donald, Clarabelle, the Big Bad Wolf, and Horace. The costumes were very popular in the 1930s, and throughout the time they were modified, but they never lost their creepy appearance. The McCall Pattern Company did an excellent job by accidentally creating the creepiest costume of the time, and perhaps of history. And this image of Minnie will always live in our nightmares.
Hey everyone!
Thank you so much, Disneyland, for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much. And if by any chance you haven't checked out his channel, we're going to leave a link in the description so you can go subscribe.
So what do you think, Luz? Which one was the scariest?
So I think for me, it was Pluto. It was super creepy seeing him walk on all fours. How about you?
I think the white rabbit, that creature was horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty creepy.
Yeah.
So let us know in the comments which one did you think it was the scariest one.
We're also going to do a poll on our Instagram.
Yeah, so you can follow us at Fastpass Facts and let us know which one did you think it was the creepiest.
So thank you everybody for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much and see you next week. Bye!
Bye guys!